Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Cooking for the Yum of It. Today I am going to be preparing Champignons Farcis, which is French for stuffed mushrooms. Now this can be used as either a hot hors d'oeuvre or, as I'm going to use it for, a vegetable side dish for a steak that I will be preparing later. But now let's get on to the mushrooms. Now here we have 12 large mushrooms. And what we're going to do first is remove the stems and set those aside because we're going to use those for later. Oh, that's okay, don't worry. Mushrooms will break. Okay, I got that one. Okay. I know a lot, well not a lot, but some people I know don't care for mushrooms that much. And one of the reasons I think why is when they've been eating them, they have not been properly prepared. What you need to do is make sure they're thoroughly washed, so you get rid of all the, that's why a lot of people, they're thoroughly washed so you don't have to worry about the dirt taste. Some people, I've seen memes and videos about just throwing away mushrooms, is because they don't clean them properly at the grocery store, and people don't think you need to wash mushrooms that you buy in the grocery store. That's not true. You still need to wash them, and you'll see why in just a second. Okay. Okay, now let's... Now, if you let me get another bowl. And you'll see why real quick. See, I don't know if you can really see it that well, but the water is a lot cloudier than it should be for water. Yeah, water is clear and colorless. And the next thing you're going to want to do is rinse them again. Make sure you get off all the dirt that didn't come off in the first washing. And then we're going to dry our mushrooms. And set those aside for now. So, I'm not going to bore you with watching me dry all the mushrooms, so let's skip ahead. Now, we're going to take 3 tablespoons of melted butter and brush the tops of our mushrooms. Now the recipe says 2 to 3, but I'm of the opinion that if you have a choice between 2 and 3, always go for 3. Okay. A little bit extra so we can give all the mushrooms a little extra dab, so they have that lovely buttery flavor. Remember, mushrooms are one of my favorite, so that's why I'm always confused when I see those memes and videos of people claiming they taste like dirt, or if they're no good, or if they taste bad, they weren't cooked properly. Now, we place the mushrooms in our hollow side up in our baking dish. Like so. I measured this out earlier, so I know they should all fit. You need to... Don't worry, this is not a case of crowding the mushrooms so much, because these will be baked rather than sauteed on the stovetop. It's not so much a case of browning. Okay, we just have to rearrange a little bit there. Now we also want to wash and dry our stems that we took earlier off of our mushrooms, because they also sometimes have a little bit of grit and dirt from the farm. We don't want that going in our mouths, do we? Oh no. I say it once, I'll say it again. If I don't like the taste of something, I don't want it going in my mouth. Okay. Let's make sure we dry this, because that's a very important step. Even little bits of stem crumb. Can you call it a crumb? I don't know. Anyway, now let me readjust my camera. We're going to put, now you can either mince these by hand, but I have found through research and personal experience it's easier to just use your food processor. Now we're just going to do a quick pulse a few times until these have been completely minced. Okay, that's pretty good. Now what we're going to do is take our minced mushroom stems, get much of it as we can out of our food processor into a regular old tea towel. And make sure it's in there nice and good. And right over here, now we're going to twist this until we get as much liquid as possible out of our stems. And that sound you hear is the oven letting me know that it has now been preheated to 375 degrees. Now, what we're going to do next, if I can get this open, is this is going to be sauteed in some more butter. Doesn't that look good? And this is the liquid we squeezed out. Now, okay, I'm going to take 2 tablespoons of butter, get that around there nice, and I love to see butter foam like that. Okay, we're going to melt this on high heat. We're not going to leave it on high heat because we don't want our butter to burn, which it just might do if it's on high for too long. Now, let's stop the film and turn it down to a medium. We're going to take our onions, our shallots. You can use green onions for this too, also known as scallions. And, oh, where'd it go? we're going to do this about 3 minutes. Maybe turn it down a little bit more. More of the mushroom there. It's starting to... Always turn on the fan if you don't want to... Okay. I decided to add some more butter, about another 2 tablespoons. It's very important. You don't want the onions and mushroom stem to cook too dry until we're ready for the next part. So we're going to let that cook a little bit longer here. Down a little bit lower on heat. Now we're going to add half a tablespoon of flour. Stir that around. And down the temperature just a bit. We want this to thicken. And then we're going to add, make sure I'm reading this correctly. Add half a cup of our heavy cream. And we're going to let this simmer until it thickens. I'm not exactly sure how long that's going to take, so a little bit lower. Like I said, we don't want it too hot. So let's just jump ahead until it's nice and thick. Lord knows we all love them thick. I was a little bit worried about it thickening, but as you can see, it is starting to thicken up really well, which is fantastic. It almost looks like one of the mother sauces. I'll have to look up how those go to be sure, but it is really starting to thicken up nicely. Next, add half a teaspoon salt and, pardon my arm, quarter teaspoon pepper, and a tablespoon and a half of dried parsley. If you're using fresh parsley, I recommend 3 tablespoons, but since I only do this kind of cooking once a week, fresh parsley just doesn't make as much sense. As it would if I cooked more often. Take a little taste. That is good. I may have gone a little bit overboard on the salt, but that's not bad. Live and learn, and I will definitely be making this again because I like mushrooms. More than Sir Mix-a-Lot likes big butts. And I cannot lie. Okay, our sauce part is done. We'll let this cool just a little bit before we move on to the next step. Look at that. I may have gone a little bit too much on the butter, oddly enough. Never thought I'd ever hear myself say that. Let me adjust my camera a little bit here. Now what we do is we take some of this mixture and we put it into the hollow part of our mushrooms. And don't worry about any of the part that spills over. And don't worry if you have extra. Actually, there's no such thing as having too much of this sauce. If you have got too much for the mushrooms, that's why we have bread. Particularly large mushroom, so we'll give it a little bit extra. That is good sauce. Now we continue. Now we're going to put a little bit of Parmesan over each mushroom. Now the recipe in the book, the French Chef cookbook I'm using, says to use grated Swiss, but I could not find any at the store. I found Swiss, but I didn't feel like bringing home a block of it and grating it, so I'm going to use Parmesan, which I like even more than Swiss, and I like Swiss cheese. Okay, now you should only need to use a quarter cup, but if you want to add some extra, just go right ahead. Now we're going to put this in the oven, which has been preheating at 375 degrees for about, what does it say here? About 15 minutes or so. Maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit less. We'll find out in 15 minutes. Although I'll probably check in 10 to see, make sure it doesn't overcook. Because you know my views on overcooking. So I will see you in approximately 10 to 15 minutes. And there you have it, the Champignons Farcis, which I will be having with my oven-grilled steak, which for that recipe you'll need to check a previous episode. But as soon as the steak is done and the mushrooms have cooled enough, they won't burn my tongue off, I'm going to be having a really nice dinner. And now the part I always love best. Champignons Farcis. Oh God. Oh, that is fantastic. That is stupendous. That is divine. And like I said, if anyone tells you I don't like mushrooms, they taste like dirt, you tell them they weren't cooked the right way. Well, that's it for this episode. Please like, subscribe, feel free to comment below. I'm currently at 55 subscribers, 945 more. I reach 1,000, and at that point YouTube will possibly, cross fingers, start paying me. Although I need to admit that isn't why I started doing this, but I have to admit it's also a pretty good incentive to keep going and build this up even more. I enjoy cooking, and if you get paid for something you enjoy, you never really work a day in your life. Anyway, that's it for now, and until next time, always remember, eat and enjoy.